I can't knock what I was saying about him before. Now I just don't like the guy personally.
That was John Cena, finally admitting what everyone suspected. He never liked Hulk Hogan, and now he's exposing why other wrestlers feel the same way. Turns out, there's a whole side to Hogan that fans never saw. So what exactly did Cena reveal, and why is he speaking up now? Let's break it down. Backstage betrayals and broken trust. When we talk about WWE's greatest superstars, John Cena inevitably enters the conversation. The 16-time world champion, the man who carried the company through the ruthless aggression era and into the PG era, has always been known for his candid observations about the wrestling business. And while Cena has largely maintained diplomatic relationships with wrestling legends, the story of why so many WWE wrestlers harbor deep resentment toward Hulk Hogan reveals a pattern of betrayal, selfishness, and destructive behavior that spans decades. To understand the depth of animosity that exists toward Hogan within the wrestling community, we must first acknowledge the man's undeniable contributions to the industry. Hogan dominated the 1980s and early 1990s during the Hulkamania era, transforming wrestling into a global phenomenon. His larger-than-life persona, his ability to connect with audiences, and his role in WWE's national expansion cannot be understated. He was the cornerstone upon which Vince McMahon built his wrestling empire, the superhero who taught children to train hard, say their prayers, and eat their vitamins. But as we peel back the layers of Hogan's legacy, a far more troubling picture emerges. This is not simply the story of a wrestler who made mistakes or had personality conflicts with his peers. The most damning indictment of Hogan's character comes from one of wrestling's most respected figures, Jesse "the Body" Ventura. The former Minnesota governor and wrestling legend has been unequivocally clear about his feelings toward Hogan. When asked about the possibility of reconciling with his former friend, Ventura's response was immediate and definitive.
Never.
What?
Can't trust him. I'm not friends with anyone I don't trust. I have to have a trust with someone to be their friend. And he's the one that ratted me to Vince when I tried to unionize.
This admission from Ventura reveals what many consider to be Hogan's most egregious betrayal of his fellow wrestlers. In 1986, ahead of WrestleMania 2, Ventura rallied WWE performers to demand better pay, health insurance, and benefits. Wrestlers were classified as independent contractors without protections, and Ventura's unionization effort represented their best hope for improving working conditions. But Hogan, who was earning more than the entire locker room combined at WrestleMania 3, chose self-preservation over solidarity. He informed Vince McMahon of the unionization plan, allowing McMahon to threaten firings and quash the effort entirely. Ventura discovered Hogan's betrayal during a 1991 lawsuit against McMahon over royalties, where McMahon confirmed that Hogan was indeed the informant. The impact of this betrayal cannot be overstated. Hogan later admitted to his actions in interviews, stating he opposed unions because "I was making more money than anybody and didn't want equal pay." This single act of treachery denied an entire generation of wrestlers better working conditions, health care, and retirement benefits. As Ventura himself stated, he betrayed every single wrestler on his roster and every single wrestler who came into the business after him. The consequences of Hogan's betrayal continue to this day. WWE's anti-union stance, reinforced by Hogan's actions, has affected wrestler welfare for decades. No union exists to this day. Wrestling fans and peers alike have criticized Hogan for denying performers better conditions, essentially trading the collective welfare of his profession for his own financial advantage. This pattern of self-serving behavior extended far beyond the unionization incident. Throughout his career, Hogan developed a reputation for using his influence and creative control clauses to protect his position at the expense of rising stars. The wrestling term Hulkamania politics became synonymous with backstage manipulation, designed to maintain dominance regardless of what was best for the company or the wrestling industry as a whole. One of the most well-documented examples of this behavior involves Bret the Hitman Hart, one of wrestling's most technically gifted performers, and a man whose integrity in the ring was never questioned. The conflict between Hart and Hogan stemmed from Hogan's alleged use of creative control to protect his spot, particularly at WrestleMania 9 in 1993. While Hogan frames this incident as a misunderstanding, the reality was far more calculated. Hart accused Hogan of refusing to lose cleanly to him, claiming Hogan said, "I'm not doing business with you," and lied about future plans. Hart has called Hogan a liar and very limited in the ring, criticizing his ego for holding back rising stars. This incident exemplified what wrestling insiders came to recognize as a pattern. Hogan would use his influence to manipulate storylines and championship decisions to maintain his position, regardless of what made sense creatively or what was best for other performers' careers. The feud strained Hart's relationship with WWE temporarily and contributed to Hart's bitterness toward the company, which was later exacerbated by the infamous Montreal Screwjob. Perhaps even more troubling was Hogan's treatment of The Undertaker, one of wrestling's most respected performers, and a man whose character and professionalism have never been questioned. After their Survivor Series 1991 match, Hogan accused The Undertaker of injuring his neck with a tombstone piledriver. This led The Undertaker to worry about his job, as he was relatively new to WWE at the time. However, video footage later showed the move was executed perfectly, proving Hogan lied to protect his image. The Undertaker has since called it a learning experience, but it created years of tension between the two performers. This incident reinforced Hogan's reputation for self-preservation, with The Undertaker later noting that Hogan faked a neck injury to undermine his position. The pattern continues with Hogan's relationship with Macho Man Randy Savage, once one of his closest friends and tag team partners as the Mega Powers. While their on-screen feud was compelling television, the real-life issues between them stemmed from jealousy and paranoia. While Hogan frames this as a misunderstanding, real-life issues arose from jealousy over Savage's then-wife, Miss Elizabeth, with Savage reportedly paranoid about Hogan's close friendship with Elizabeth, leading to accusations of inappropriate behavior. Tensions boiled over when Savage allegedly punched Hogan, giving him a black eye before WrestleMania 9 in 1993, with Scott Steiner corroborating this in a documentary, saying Savage admitted to hitting Hogan for disrespecting him. These incidents paint a picture of a man whose ego and self-interest repeatedly took precedence over professional relationships and the greater good of the wrestling industry. But perhaps most damaging to Hogan's legacy was his role in legitimizing and normalizing the use of performance-enhancing drugs in professional wrestling, a culture that would ultimately contribute to numerous premature deaths and health issues among performers. During the 1994 federal trial of Vince McMahon for steroid distribution, Hogan testified under immunity, admitting to using anabolic steroids for nearly 14 years, 1976 to 1990. This testimony contradicted earlier public denials, particularly his appearance on the Arsenio Hall show in 1991, where he had downplayed his steroid use. The revelation exposed the widespread use of steroids in wrestling, with Hogan estimating that 75 to 80% of wrestlers he knew in the 1980s used them. While Hogan's testimony helped McMahon's acquittal, it simultaneously damaged his image as a wholesome role model and revealed the dark underbelly of an industry that prioritized physical appearance over performer health. The culture of steroid use that Hogan helped normalize would contribute to countless health problems and premature deaths in the wrestling industry for decades to come. Yet these professional betrayals and backstage machinations would pale in comparison to the personal scandals that would later emerge, revealing an even darker side to the man behind the Hulkamania persona and forever altering how fans and wrestlers alike viewed their once-beloved hero, the scandals that shattered a legacy. The foundation of Hogan's public image was built on wholesomeness and moral clarity. He was the good guy who taught children to train hard, say their prayers, and eat their vitamins. Parents trusted him. Children idolized him. Wrestling promoters marketed him as the ultimate American hero. But behind this carefully crafted image lay a man whose personal life was spiraling into chaos, whose family relationships were deteriorating, and whose private conversations revealed attitudes and beliefs that stood in stark contrast to his public persona. Perhaps no scandal damaged Hogan's reputation more severely or revealed the depths of his moral failings than the racism controversy that erupted in 2015. The incident stemmed from a sex tape recorded in 2007. The leaked audio contained not just one moment of poor judgment, but a sustained pattern of racist language and attitudes that shocked even his most devoted fans. While Hogan's explanation provides context for his emotional state, it cannot excuse the content of what was recorded. The leaked transcript revealed Hogan using the N-word multiple times while discussing his daughter Brooke's dating life, expressing discomfort about her reportedly dating a black man. Even more disturbing, another audio clip surfaced where, after his son Nick's 2007 car accident that nearly killed a friend, Hogan expressed concerns about being reincarnated as a black person due to karma. The fallout was immediate and devastating. WWE terminated his contract on July 24, 2015, and removed all references to him from their website, including his Hall of Fame profile. The company issued a statement emphasizing their commitment to diversity and inclusion, effectively erasing one of their biggest stars from their official history. When confronted about his racist remarks, Hogan attempted to provide context and explanation, but his words only served to further damage his credibility. This attempt at explanation revealed not just past racism, but a fundamental misunderstanding of accountability and responsibility. Rather than taking full ownership of his beliefs and language, Hogan attempted to shift blame to his environment and upbringing, a defense that rang hollow to many observers. The impact on his relationship with black wrestlers and fans was immediate and lasting. Kofi Kingston of the New Day was indifferent professionally, but personally hurt, choosing not to associate with Hogan after his reinstatement. Mark Henry noted division in the locker room, with some wrestlers seeing Hogan's apologies as financially motivated rather than sincere. Even after his reinstatement in 2018, boos persisted at events, and wrestlers like Seth Rollins labeled Hogan a victim of his own ego for lacking respect. The racism scandal was inextricably linked to another deeply troubling chapter in Hogan's life, the sex tape controversy that had been brewing since 2007. The tape, which featured Hogan with Heather Clem, the wife of radio personality Bubba the Love Sponge, was recorded without Hogan's knowledge during what he described as a period of personal turmoil and poor decision-making. While Hogan's admission of accountability was appropriate, the circumstances surrounding the tape revealed troubling patterns in his personal relationships and judgment. The tape was leaked by Gawker Media in 2012, prompting Hogan to file a $100 million civil lawsuit against the outlet for invasion of privacy. The legal battle culminated in 2016 when a Florida jury awarded Hogan $140 million in damages, later settled for $31 million, leading to Gawker's bankruptcy. The betrayal by someone he considered a close friend added another layer of complexity to the situation. This incident revealed not just poor judgment in Hogan's personal relationships, but a pattern of surrounding himself with people who would ultimately exploit and betray him. The fact that the racist remarks came to light through this sex tape created a perfect storm of scandal that would permanently damage his reputation. But perhaps the most heartbreaking aspect of Hogan's personal downfall was the destruction of his family relationships, particularly with his daughter Brooke. The Hogan family had been thrust into the public eye through their reality show Hogan Knows Best, which portrayed them as a close-knit, loving family. The reality, as later revealed, was far more complex and troubling. Brooke Hogan has publicly alleged that she experienced extremely verbal and mental abuse since childhood, which frequently turned physical. She clarified that her decision to go no contact with both parents was for completely separate reasons, and emphasized that the abuse was not by the person you would assume, suggesting complexities in the family dynamics that went far beyond public perception. The deterioration of Hogan's marriage to Linda added another layer of public embarrassment and personal failure. Their 2009 divorce was highly publicized, involving accusations of infidelity, including an affair with a close friend of their daughter, Brooke. Linda publicly criticized Hogan, labeling him a sex addict and liar in media appearances. Adding to the family's troubles was the tragic car accident involving Hogan's son Nick in 2007. Nick, then 17, was involved in a severe car accident while driving under the influence and racing his Toyota Supra, leaving his passenger, John Graziano, a former Marine, with catastrophic brain injuries requiring lifelong care. The Graziano family sued the Hogans, settling for approximately $1.5 million after legal and medical costs. Hogan faced additional criticism for comments recorded during Nick's jail time, where he suggested Graziano's injuries were part of God's plan, drawing ire for insensitivity. These comments revealed a callousness and lack of empathy that further damaged his public image and strained his relationships within the wrestling community. The cumulative effect of these personal scandals created a picture of a man whose private life stood in stark contrast to his public persona. The wholesome family man who preached about training, prayers, and vitamins was revealed to be someone whose own family was fractured by abuse, whose personal relationships were marked by betrayal and poor judgment, and whose private conversations revealed attitudes that contradicted everything he claimed to represent. For wrestlers who had looked up to Hogan as a role model and industry leader, these revelations were particularly devastating. The man who was supposed to represent the best of professional wrestling instead became a symbol of hypocrisy and moral failure. His actions didn't just damage his own reputation, they reflected poorly on the entire wrestling industry. These personal failures would have far-reaching consequences, fundamentally altering how the wrestling community approached leadership, accountability, and the responsibilities that come with being the face of the industry. The lasting impact and industry reckoning. The wrestling industry has always been built on larger-than-life characters and compelling storylines, but Hogan's career exposed the dangerous intersection between fictional heroism and real-world responsibility. When wrestlers step outside the ring, they carry with them the weight of their public personas and the expectations of fans who have invested emotionally in their characters. Hogan's failures weren't just personal shortcomings, they were betrayals of the trust placed in him by an entire generation of wrestling fans and industry professionals. John Cena, who has often been compared to Hogan as WWE's top babyface star, represents a stark contrast in how to handle the responsibilities that come with being the face of a wrestling company. Cena has broken Hogan's Make-A-Wish record, granting over 650 wishes, a point of pride he attributed to Hogan's influence. However, where Hogan used his position for personal gain at the expense of his peers, Cena has consistently advocated for his fellow wrestlers and maintained his character both inside and outside the ring. The differences in their approaches to industry leadership became particularly apparent when examining their respective relationships with upcoming talent. While Hogan was notorious for his Hulkamania politics and refusal to put over younger wrestlers, Cena built his legacy on elevating new stars and ensuring the continuity of the wrestling business. This fundamental difference in philosophy reflects a broader evolution in wrestling culture, one that increasingly values collaboration over self-preservation. In early 2025, Hogan critiqued John Cena's heel turn constructively, comparing it to his NWO formation. When John Cena turned heel, I expected more of the same. It didn't feel like that big tidal wave coming at you. While this might seem like standard wrestling commentary, it reveals the ongoing tension between Hogan's generation and contemporary wrestlers who approach the business with different values and priorities. The substance abuse issues that plagued Hogan throughout his career also highlight the industry's failure to protect performer health and well-being. His candid discussion of his struggles with prescription painkillers and fentanyl addiction provides a stark illustration of the physical and psychological toll that wrestling careers exact on performers. This harrowing account of addiction and recovery reveals the human cost of a wrestling culture that prioritized performance over performer welfare. Brooke Hogan's count of her father's surgeries is staggering. The fact that Hogan's opposition to unionization contributed to an industry structure that failed to provide adequate health care and support for wrestlers dealing with such issues adds another layer of tragic irony to his legacy. The political controversies that emerged later in Hogan's career further alienated him from many in the wrestling community. His vocal support for divisive political figures and his appearance at highly partisan events created additional tensions within an industry that increasingly values diversity and inclusion. While wrestlers are certainly entitled to their political opinions, Hogan's decision to inject himself so prominently into partisan politics represented another departure from the unifying figure he was supposed to be. For an industry that draws fans from across the political spectrum, and particularly for wrestlers from diverse backgrounds, Hogan's political activism served as yet another source of division and disappointment. The complex relationship between Hogan and his family, particularly his estrangement from his daughter Brooke, provides perhaps the most heartbreaking illustration of how his personal failures affected those closest to him. Despite the love expressed in their final conversation, their relationship remained fractured until his death, with Brooke learning of his passing through her brother Nick's text to her husband. Brooke honored her father posthumously by naming her daughter Molly Jean Oleksy, using Hulk's middle name, Jean. This gesture suggests that despite their estrangement, she still cared for him deeply, even though they were not close at the time of his passing. The tragedy of their relationship lies not in hatred or indifference, but in the recognition that love alone was not enough to overcome the damage caused by years of dysfunction and poor choices. When examining why wrestlers like John Cena and others in the industry harbor negative feelings toward Hogan, it's important to understand that their resentment isn't simply about personal dislike or professional jealousy. It stems from a recognition that Hogan's actions actively harmed the wrestling industry and the people within it. His betrayal of the unionization effort denied wrestlers basic protections and benefits that could have prevented countless injuries and premature deaths. His backstage politicking cost other performers opportunities and earnings. His personal scandals damaged the reputation of professional wrestling as a whole, with greater emphasis on performer safety, diversity, and accountability. Modern WWE has implemented extensive wellness programs, anti-bullying training policies, and support systems that might have prevented some of the issues that plagued Hogan's generation. However, the fundamental problems that Hogan's career exposed, the lack of union representation, the pressure to perform through injuries, and the culture of ego-driven politics, continue to affect the industry to this day. John Cena's approach to leadership represents the antithesis of Hogan's methods. Where Hogan hoarded opportunities and protected his position at all costs, Cena has made a career of putting over younger talent and using his platform to advocate for positive change. Cena's record-breaking Make-A-Wish involvement demonstrates a genuine commitment to the responsibilities that come with being a wrestling superstar, rather than simply exploiting the position for personal gain. The contrast between these two approaches to wrestling stardom illustrates why many contemporary wrestlers view Hogan with such disappointment. It's not just about what he did wrong, it's about what he could have done right. With his influence and platform, Hogan could have been a force for positive change in the wrestling industry. Instead, his legacy is one of missed opportunities and damaged relationships. For current and future wrestling stars, it's all about the importance of using one's platform responsibly and the lasting consequences of prioritizing self-interest over the greater good. The fact that wrestlers like John Cena, who never directly worked with Hogan during his prime, still harbor reservations about him speaks to the enduring impact of his actions on wrestling culture. These feelings aren't based on personal animosity, but on a recognition that Hogan's choices fundamentally shaped the industry in ways that continue to affect performers today. Thanks for watching. If you had a good time, keep the adventure alive by clicking on one of the suggested videos on your screen right now for more amazing content.